The water delivery route. Chapter 1, Morning Prep. The sky was still dark when Michael's alarm went off at 4:30 a.m. He reached over and silenced it with a practiced motion, the same movement he'd made 6 days a week for the past 11 years. The room was cool, and the silence felt like a physical presence around him. His wife slept on beside him, her breathing deep and even. He slipped out of bed and padded to the bathroom. The tiles were cold beneath his feet. He brushed his teeth without turning on the light, guided by memory and the faint glow coming through the small window. The toothbrush made soft, rhythmic sounds against his teeth. In the kitchen, he prepared his thermos of coffee. The coffee maker hummed quietly, a familiar sound in the stillness. While it brewed, he assembled his lunch, the same turkey sandwich, apple, and granola bar he packed every day. The routine was comforting in its predictability. Outside, the air held that particular stillness that comes before dawn. His breath made small clouds in front of him as he walked to his car. The seat was cold, and the engine turned over with a low rumble that seemed too loud in the quiet neighborhood. He let it warm up for precisely 3 minutes, watching as the dashboard clock changed from 5:02 to 5:05. The roads were nearly empty on his drive to the warehouse. Streetlights cast pools of yellow light on the pavement. He passed a delivery truck, a taxi, and 2 early commuters. Each vehicle kept to itself, like ships passing in the night, all of them sharing the peaceful solitude of early morning. The warehouse appeared ahead, its large outline emerging from the darkness. The security light over the door cast a pale glow. Michael parked in his usual spot, third from the left, and walked to the entrance. His key card made a soft beep as he swiped it, and the door unlocked with a gentle click. Inside, the warehouse was lit by fluorescent lights that hummed overhead. The space smelled of plastic, cardboard, and the faint mineral scent of water. Rows of blue 5-gallon bottles stood in neat formation, waiting. 2 other delivery drivers were already there, moving quietly through their morning preparations. They nodded to each other but didn't speak. Words seemed unnecessary in the calm rhythm of the morning. Michael went to the dispatch desk and picked up his clipboard. The paper made a soft rustling sound as he flipped through the pages. Today's route was a familiar one, 8 stops, beginning with the law office downtown and ending with the empty insurance agency. He'd been delivering to these same places every Tuesday for years. The names and addresses were as familiar to him as his own reflection. He wheeled a dolly to the storage area and began loading bottles. Each one weighed 40 pounds, but his body knew exactly how to lift them, knees bent, back straight, a smooth motion upward. The plastic bottles made a hollow sound when they bumped against each other. He counted them carefully, 24 bottles for today's deliveries, plus 2 extras just in case. Once the bottles were loaded onto his truck, he checked the vehicle thoroughly. The routine was ingrained after so many years, tire pressure, fluid levels, mirrors adjusted just right. The truck was clean and orderly, everything in its place. Michael found comfort in this orderliness, in knowing exactly where everything was and that everything was as it should be. By 5:45, 2 more drivers had arrived. They moved through the warehouse with the same quiet efficiency. A muted conversation about yesterday's baseball game floated across the space. Michael listened without joining in. The familiar voices were like background music, part of the morning's gentle symphony. At 6 o'clock, the warehouse manager arrived. "Morning, Michael," she said, her voice soft in the quiet space. "Morning, Joan," he replied. Same route today. Same as always. She nodded and moved on. No more words were needed. Michael checked his clipboard one last time, then folded it and placed it on the passenger seat. He adjusted the mirrors again, fastened his seatbelt, and turned the key. The truck came to life with a low rumble. The clock on the dashboard read 6:15 a.m. Right on schedule. He pulled out of the warehouse parking lot and onto the still quiet streets. The sky was beginning to lighten now, a deep blue replacing the darkness. A few more cars were on the road, but traffic was still light. The truck moved steadily forward, carrying its cargo of water toward the first stop of the day. Chapter 2: The Law Office. The sun was just beginning to touch the tops of the buildings as Michael pulled his truck into the loading zone behind the law office. The tall glass structure reflected the morning light, creating patterns on the pavement. He'd been coming to this same spot every Tuesday at 7 a.m. for so long that it felt like an extension of his own home. He turned off the engine and sat for a moment, watching his breath slowly disappear in the cab. The loading zone was empty except for his truck. From here, he could see into the back entrance of the law office. A few lights were already on inside. Someone was always there early, though he rarely saw who it was. Michael stepped down from the cab and walked around to the back of the truck. He opened the rear doors with practiced ease, left door first, then right. The bottles stood in neat rows, secured with bungee cords. He released the cords with 2 quick motions and placed them in their designated spot on the truck wall. The dolly waited in its place. He pulled it out and positioned it on the pavement. 2 bottles were lifted onto it, one to replace the empty in the office's main reception area, and one for the small kitchenette on the 3rd floor. His body performed these actions without conscious thought, muscles moving in familiar patterns honed by years of repetition. The back door of the law office had a keypad. Michael entered the 5-digit code, 23791, a number as familiar to him as his own birthday. The door made a soft click as it unlocked. He pushed it open with his shoulder, holding the dolly steady with both hands. Inside, the hallway was dim, lit only by safety lights. The floor was smooth beneath the wheels of the dolly. He moved forward, the sound of the wheels creating a gentle rhythm on the polished surface. The corridor smelled faintly of furniture polish and paper. At the end of the hallway was a service elevator. Michael pressed the call button and waited. The elevator arrived with a soft ding, doors sliding open to reveal an empty interior. He wheeled the dolly inside and pressed the button for the lobby. As the elevator rose, Michael watched the floor numbers light up sequentially, B1. The elevator moved upward with a gentle hum. He adjusted his grip on the dolly, shifting his weight slightly from one foot to the other. The elevator stopped at the lobby level, and the doors opened with another soft ding. The law office lobby was spacious, with high ceilings and modern furniture in muted tones. Recessed lighting cast a soft glow on polished surfaces. The reception desk was empty at this hour, but a light was on in the office behind it. Michael could see someone moving about, a woman with dark hair, probably the same receptionist who was always here early on Tuesdays. He wheeled the dolly across the lobby to where the water cooler stood in a corner near a small seating area. The cooler hummed quietly. The bottle on top was nearly empty, with just a few inches of water remaining. Michael positioned the dolly beside it and prepared to make the exchange. First, he carefully removed the nearly empty bottle. The plastic made a soft popping sound as he lifted it off the cooler. He placed it on the dolly, securing it with one hand. With his other hand, he took the dust cap off the full bottle, then lifted it with a smooth motion, knees bent, back straight, and placed it onto the cooler. The water gurgled as it began to fill the reservoir. While he worked, the woman from the back office appeared. She was arranging papers at the reception desk, not looking in his direction. Her movements were as methodical as his own. After a moment, she glanced up and gave him a slight nod of acknowledgement. He nodded back. Neither spoke. This silent exchange had been their routine for years. Michael wheeled the dolly to the elevator again and pressed the button for the third floor. The doors closed, and the elevator resumed its gentle ascent. The numbers lit up, 2, 3. When the doors opened, he stepped into another corridor, this one carpeted in a neutral gray. The kitchenette was halfway down the hallway on the right. The door was propped open with a small wedge. Inside, the space was neat and minimalist. A refrigerator hummed in the corner. The countertops were empty except for a coffee maker and a microwave. The water cooler stood against the far wall. Here, he repeated the process, removing the near-empty bottle, replacing it with a full one. The water gurgled as it filled the reservoir. The sound echoed slightly in the quiet room. The kitchenette smelled faintly of coffee and the lemon cleaner used on the countertops. Task complete, Michael returned to the elevator with the dolly carrying the 2 empty bottles. He descended to the basement level and retraced his path down the dim hallway. The wheels of the dolly made the same rhythmic sound on the floor, a steady companion to his footsteps. Outside, the sun was higher now, and the day had brightened considerably. He loaded the empty bottles into his truck, placing them in the section designated for returns. The dolly went back into its place. He closed the truck doors, right first, then left, and secured them. Back in the driver's seat, Michael checked his clipboard. The first delivery was complete. He drew a neat line through it on his list and noted the time, 7:22 a.m. Right on schedule. He started the engine, checked his mirrors, and pulled away from the curb. The truck moved forward smoothly, carrying him toward his second stop of the day. Chapter 3: The Corner Store. The route to the corner store took Michael through familiar streets that were gradually filling with morning traffic. Cars moved in orderly lines, stopping and starting at the rhythm of the traffic lights. The sun was fully up now, casting long shadows across the pavement. A few pedestrians walked along the sidewalks, most carrying coffee cups or briefcases, moving with purpose toward their destinations. Michael drove with both hands on the wheel, maintaining a steady speed. The truck hummed beneath him, a constant, reassuring vibration. He knew every turn, every traffic light on this route. His body anticipated each movement before his mind registered it. Ease off the gas approaching the intersection, brake gently, check the mirror before changing lanes. After 12 minutes of driving, the corner store came into view. It was a small brick building with large windows and a green awning. Kim's Market was painted in neat white letters across the front. The store occupied the corner of Maple Street and 4th Avenue, just as it had for the past 30 years. Michael had been delivering water here every Tuesday since he started this job. He pulled the truck into the small parking area beside the store. There were 3 spots, and he always used the one furthest from the entrance, leaving the closer ones for customers. He parked with practiced precision, the truck perfectly parallel to the painted lines. Outside the store, Mr. Kim was sweeping the sidewalk with slow, methodical strokes. He was in his 70s now, but still opened the store every morning at exactly 6:30. The broom made a soft, scratching sound against the concrete. Mr. Kim looked up as Michael stepped down from the truck, and their eyes met. The older man nodded once, a gesture of quiet acknowledgement. Michael went to the back of the truck and opened the doors. He took out the dolly and loaded a single bottle onto it. The movement was fluid, a dance he had performed countless times. The weight of the bottle felt right, familiar in his hands. He wheeled the dolly toward the store entrance. Mr. Kim had propped the door open with a small wooden wedge. The bell above the door gave a gentle ding as Michael passed through, even though the door didn't close behind him. Inside, the store was quiet and meticulously organized. Shelves lined the walls, filled with carefully arranged products. The floor was clean, the linoleum worn but well-maintained. The space smelled of bread from the small bakery section, mixed with the faint scent of the lemon cleaner Mr. Kim used every morning. Michael wheeled the dolly down the narrow central aisle toward the back of the store. He passed displays of canned goods, breakfast cereals, and household items. Everything was in its place, just as it had been last week and the week before. The water cooler stood in the back corner, next to a small seating area with 2 metal chairs and a round table. An elderly man sat there, reading a newspaper. He didn't look up as Michael approached. He was a regular customer, always there on Tuesday mornings with his newspaper and a cup of tea purchased from the store. The water cooler hummed softly. Michael positioned the dolly beside it and began the familiar process of changing the bottle. He removed the nearly empty one first, lifting it with care. The elderly man turned a page of his newspaper, the paper making a soft rustling sound in the quiet store. Michael placed the new bottle on the cooler with practiced ease. The water gurgled as it began to fill the reservoir. He checked the spigots and made sure the cooler was functioning properly. Everything was in order, as it always was at Kim's Market. With the empty bottle secured on the dolly, Michael made his way back through the store. At the register, Mrs. Kim was arranging a display of chewing gum and mints. She looked up and smiled briefly. The smile reached her eyes, creating a network of fine lines at the corners. She didn't speak, and neither did he. Their routine didn't require words. Mr. Kim was still outside, now watering the small potted plants that flanked the entrance. The watering can made a gentle splashing sound as the water hit the soil. He stepped aside to let Michael pass with the dolly, then resumed his task. Back at the truck, Michael loaded the empty bottle into the return section and secured the dolly in its place. He closed the truck doors and walked around to the driver's side. Before getting in, he paused and looked back at the store. Through the window, he could see Mrs. Kim behind the counter and the elderly man still reading his newspaper. Mr. Kim was placing the watering can back on its hook by the entrance. The scene was peaceful, orderly. Everything and everyone in their place, just as they had been every Tuesday morning for years. There was comfort in this consistency, in knowing exactly what to expect and finding it exactly as it should be. Michael climbed back into the driver's seat and checked his clipboard. He drew a line through Kim's Market and noted the time, 8:17 a.m. He was precisely on schedule. He started the engine, checked his mirrors, and pulled away from the parking space. The truck moved forward smoothly, carrying him toward his next destination. The sun was higher now, and the day was fully underway around him. Traffic moved in its customary patterns, and pedestrians walked with purpose along the sidewalks. Michael settled into the driver's seat, his hands resting comfortably on the wheel, his body attuned to the familiar rhythm of the day's route. Chapter 4: The Apartment Lobby. The residential building stood 18 stories high, its windows reflecting the late morning sun. Michael parked his truck in the designated delivery zone along the curb. The digital clock on the dashboard read 9:05 a.m. He was exactly on schedule. He sat for a moment, hands resting lightly on the steering wheel. The building was called the Meridian, though he had never seen the name written anywhere except on his delivery sheet. In his mind, it was simply the third stop on his Tuesday route. Outside, the street was busier now. Cars passed at regular intervals. Pedestrians walked by, some hurrying, others taking their time. A woman with a small dog paused at the corner, waiting for the light to change. The dog sniffed at a nearby tree, its tail wagging gently. Michael stepped down from the truck and walked around to the back. He opened the doors and secured them. The bottles waited in neat rows, diminished now by the deliveries he had already made. He pulled out the dolly and loaded it with 3 bottles for the Meridian, 1 for the main lobby, 1 for the resident lounge on the 8th floor, and 1 for the rooftop terrace that was only accessible in warmer months. The dolly's wheels made a soft sound on the pavement as he rolled it toward the building's entrance. The glass doors were heavy but well-balanced. Michael pushed through them with practiced ease, holding the door with his shoulder while maneuvering the dolly inside. The lobby was spacious and climate-controlled. After the mild warmth of the morning outside, the air here felt cool against his skin. The floor was marble, polished to a soft shine. His footsteps and the wheels of the dolly created gentle echoes in the high-ceilinged space. The lobby smelled faintly of furniture polish and the subtle fragrance of the fresh flowers that were always arranged in a large vase on the central table. Today the flowers were white lilies, their scent barely perceptible in the large space. At the reception desk, a security guard sat watching monitors. He was middle-aged with gray hair at his temples. Michael had seen him every Tuesday for the past 3 years but didn't know his name. The guard glanced up as Michael entered, then returned his attention to the monitors without speaking. This silent acknowledgement was their usual greeting. Michael wheeled the dolly to the far corner of the lobby where the water cooler stood next to a small seating area. The leather armchairs were empty this morning. Sometimes residents sat there, reading or checking their phones, but today the lobby was quiet. The water cooler hummed softly. Michael positioned the dolly beside it and began the familiar process of changing the bottle. He removed the nearly empty one, its weight reduced by consumption. The plastic made a soft pop as it cleared the cooler's neck. He placed it carefully on the dolly, then removed the blue cap from the full bottle. With practiced motion, he lifted the bottle, knees bent, back straight, and inverted it onto the cooler. Water gurgled as it began to fill the reservoir. While he worked, an elevator chimed, and the doors slid open. A woman in a business suit stepped out, her heels clicking rhythmically on the marble floor. She walked toward the entrance without glancing in Michael's direction. The automatic doors opened for her, and she disappeared into the morning outside. Michael secured the empty bottle on the dolly, then wheeled it toward the service elevator at the back of the lobby. He pressed the call button and waited. The doors opened almost immediately. The service elevator was almost always available at this hour. Inside, the elevator was utilitarian, with metal walls and a rubber floor. It smelled vaguely of cleaning products. He pressed the button for the 8th floor and felt the gentle rise as the elevator ascended. The floor numbers lit up sequentially: 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The elevator slowed smoothly and came to a stop. The doors opened onto a carpeted hallway. The resident lounge was to the right. Michael wheeled the dolly down the corridor, passing numbered doors behind which people lived their lives. The carpet muffled the sound of the wheels. The hallway smelled of the same furniture polish as the lobby, with undertones of laundry detergent and the faint scent of someone's morning coffee. The lounge doors were propped open. Inside, the space was designed for comfort and community: sofas, armchairs, a large television mounted on one wall, and tables where residents could work or socialize. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city. The water cooler stood in the corner near a small kitchenette area. Michael went through the same careful process of replacing the bottle. The room was empty except for an elderly man doing a crossword puzzle at one of the tables. The man didn't look up. His pencil made soft scratching sounds on the paper. Back at the elevator, Michael pressed the button for the top floor. The elevator rose smoothly, the numbers lighting up in sequence. At the top, the doors opened onto a short hallway that led to the rooftop terrace. The door to the outside was propped open with a small wedge. The terrace was landscaped with potted trees and shrubs arranged around seating areas. The water cooler stood under a small pavilion to protect it from the elements. Michael replaced the bottle with the same careful motions he had used dozens of times already today. From this height, the city spread out in all directions. Buildings, streets, parks, and in the distance, the river winding through it all. Michael allowed himself a brief moment to take in the view. It was the same view as last week, and the week before, yet somehow it was always slightly different: changes in light, in weather, in the subtle shifting of the seasons. The terrace was empty this morning. Sometimes there were residents here doing yoga or reading, but today he had the space to himself. The quiet was profound, the city sounds reduced to a distant hum from 18 stories below. He returned to the elevator with the dolly carrying the empty bottles. The descent was smooth and uneventful. In the lobby, the security guard remained at his post, eyes on the monitors. Michael nodded to him as he passed. The guard raised his hand in a minimal gesture of acknowledgement. Outside, the sun was higher now, the shadows shorter. Michael loaded the empty bottles onto the truck and secured the dolly in its place. He closed the doors and walked around to the driver's side. In the cab, he marked the meridian as complete on his clipboard and noted the time, 9:52 a.m. Still on schedule. He started the engine, checked his mirrors, and pulled away from the curb. The truck moved forward into the flow of traffic, carrying him toward his next destination. The day continued its gentle unfolding around him, one familiar moment following another in peaceful succession. Chapter 5: The Waiting Room. The medical clinic occupied the first floor of a modern building on Elm Street. Its facade was mostly glass, with the clinic's name, Riverdale Family Practice, displayed in simple blue letters above the entrance. Michael pulled into the small parking area reserved for deliveries and service vehicles. The clock on the dashboard read 10:18 a.m. He went through the now familiar routine of retrieving the dolly and loading it with a single bottle for the clinic's waiting room. The parking lot was half full with patients' cars. A woman was helping an elderly man from a vehicle to the clinic entrance, their progress slow but steady. The clinic's automatic doors slid open as Michael approached with the dolly. Inside, the air was noticeably cooler than outside, and it carried the distinct scent of medical facilities, a blend of antiseptic, paper, and the faint underlying smell of illness contained and managed. The waiting room was modestly sized, with chairs arranged in rows and small tables holding magazines. Most of the chairs were occupied. Patients sat quietly, some looking at their phones, others reading, a few simply staring into space with the patient resignation of those accustomed to waiting. At the reception desk, a woman in scrubs was talking on the phone. She glanced up as Michael entered, gave a small nod of recognition, and continued her conversation. Behind the reception area was a sliding glass window, currently closed, that led to the inner offices and examination rooms. The water cooler stood in the corner near a small play area for children. A young boy was stacking blocks on a low table while his mother watched from a nearby chair. The boy looked up curiously as Michael approached with the dolly. With practiced movements, Michael removed the nearly empty bottle from the cooler. The plastic made the familiar soft popping sound. The boy watched with interest. Michael smiled briefly at him, then continued his work, placing the empty bottle on the dolly and preparing the full one. As he lifted the new bottle into place, the water gurgled loudly in the quiet room. A few patients glanced up at the sound, then returned to their waiting. The boy continued to watch, seemingly fascinated by the simple process. The cooler hummed as it began cooling the fresh water. Michael checked that everything was functioning properly, then turned to leave. The boy waved at him. Michael nodded in acknowledgement, a small gesture of connection in the otherwise impersonal space. On his way out, he passed a nurse leading a patient from the waiting area to the examination rooms. The nurse held a clipboard and was asking quiet questions. The patient, an elderly woman with a cane, answered in a soft voice. They passed Michael without looking up, absorbed in their exchange. Back outside, the sun was warm on his face after the cool interior of the clinic. The woman and elderly man he had seen earlier were no longer in sight, presumably now inside waiting for their appointment. The parking lot was unchanged except for a different car now pulling into a space near the entrance. Michael loaded the empty bottle onto the truck and secured the dolly. He closed the doors and walked around to the driver's side. Inside the cab, he checked his clipboard and marked the clinic as complete. The time was 10:37 a.m. He was running slightly ahead of schedule now. He started the engine and pulled away from the parking space. As he drove toward his next destination, he passed through familiar neighborhoods. The city had a rhythm to it, a pattern of movement and stillness that he had observed countless times on his route. Cars moved in predictable flows. Pedestrians clustered at crosswalks, then dispersed. Shops opened their doors. The day unfolded in its orderly progression. Michael drove with both hands on the wheel, his body relaxed into the familiar seat. The truck responded to his touch like an extension of himself, slowing and accelerating in harmony with his intentions. The road stretched before him, leading him onward through the gentle flow of the day. Chapter 6: The Empty Office. It was just past noon when Michael arrived at the insurance agency. The building was smaller than the others on his route, a two-story structure with brick facing and modest signage. A small parking lot surrounded it on three sides. Unlike his previous stops, the parking lot here was nearly empty. Only 2 cars were present, likely belonging to the cleaning staff. The insurance agency was closed on Tuesdays for administrative work, with no clients scheduled to visit. Michael parked in his usual spot near the rear entrance. The midday sun cast short shadows on the pavement. A gentle breeze moved through the ornamental trees planted along the property line. Fallen leaves skittered across the asphalt in small, circular patterns. He retrieved the dolly and loaded it with 1 bottle for the agency's reception area. The routine was automatic now, his body moving through the familiar motions without conscious thought. The dolly's wheels made a rhythmic sound on the pavement as he approached the rear entrance. The door had a keypad lock. Michael entered the 6-digit code, 472591, that he had been given years ago. The lock made a soft click as it disengaged. He pushed the door open with his shoulder and guided the dolly inside. The hallway was dimly lit, illuminated only by the emergency exit signs and what little daylight filtered through from the rooms beyond. His footsteps echoed slightly in the empty space. The air was still, holding the scent of carpet cleaner and the faint, indefinable smell of an office temporarily vacated. He moved down the corridor to the reception area. The space was neat and orderly, but without the presence of people, it had an unfinished quality to it, like a stage set waiting for the actors to arrive. Chairs were tucked under desks. Computer monitors were dark. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking the passage of time in an otherwise motionless room. The water cooler stood in the corner near the client's seating area. Michael positioned the dolly beside it and began the familiar process of changing the bottle. In the silence, each sound seemed amplified, the pop of the bottle being removed, the hollow sound of the empty bottle being placed on the dolly, the gurgle of water filling the reservoir of the cooler. As he worked, a door opened somewhere in the back of the office. Footsteps approached, then a woman appeared in the doorway. She wore jeans and a sweater rather than business attire, the casual clothing of someone working when no clients would see them. She carried a stack of folders. "Oh, hello," she said, her voice sounding loud in the quiet space. "I forgot it was Tuesday." Michael nodded in greeting. "Just the regular delivery," he said. She smiled briefly. "We're always closed, but you always come. Like clockwork." "Tuesday is Tuesday," he replied, a simple statement of fact. She crossed the room and placed the folders on one of the desks. "I'm just catching up on filing. Everyone else is out at a training seminar." She opened a drawer and began sorting the folders into it. The papers made soft rustling sounds. Michael finished securing the water bottle and checked that the cooler was functioning properly. The familiar hum started up as the cooling system engaged. "Do you need a signature today?" the woman asked, looking up from her task. "No," Michael said. "Just the delivery." She nodded and returned to her filing. Michael wheeled the dolly back toward the entrance. His movements were unhurried, part of the peaceful rhythm of the day. In the hallway, he noticed a small table where a note had been left. It read, "Water delivered Tuesday 12:15 p.m., with a space for his initials. This was part of the Tuesday routine as well. He took the pen that was attached to the clipboard on the wall and signed MH in the designated space. Outside, the day had warmed further. The breeze had picked up slightly, rustling the leaves in the ornamental trees. A maintenance worker was collecting trash from the bins at the edge of the parking lot. They nodded to each other in passing, two people going about their separate tasks in the quiet afternoon. Michael loaded the empty bottle onto the truck and secured the dolly. He closed the doors and walked around to the driver's side. Inside the cab, he marked the insurance agency as complete on his clipboard. The time was 12:28 p.m. He was still slightly ahead of schedule. He started the engine and pulled away from the parking space. The truck moved forward smoothly, carrying him toward his next and final destination before returning to the warehouse. The sun was high now, the day at its fullest. Michael settled into the driver's seat, his hands resting comfortably on the wheel, his body attuned to the familiar rhythm of the road. Chapter 7: Evening Return. The last delivery of the day was to a small accounting firm in a renovated warehouse building. The space had high ceilings and exposed brick walls, with modern furniture and lighting creating a blend of old and new. The firm was busy, with people moving purposefully between desks and offices. Michael changed the water bottle in their kitchenette, a space tucked away at the back of the open-plan office. No one spoke to him, but a few nodded in acknowledgement as he passed with his dolly. By the time he returned to his truck, the quality of the light had changed. The intensity of midday had softened, the shadows gradually lengthening as afternoon progressed towards evening. The city had a different energy now, with more cars on the roads as people began to leave their offices early or run errands before the end of the workday. Michael drove back toward the warehouse, retracing in reverse the route he had followed that morning. The truck was lighter now, carrying only empty bottles where full ones had been. He drove with the same steady focus, watching the familiar streets pass by. At 3:45 p.m., he pulled into the warehouse parking lot. The security light over the door was off now, unnecessary in the daylight. He parked in his usual spot, third from the left. Several other delivery trucks were already back, their drivers having completed their own routes for the day. Michael walked around to the back of the truck and opened the doors. The empty bottles stood in neat rows where he had placed them throughout the day. He unloaded them onto a larger dolly, arranging them carefully. Each bottle would be cleaned and refilled, continuing the cycle that had been ongoing for years before he joined the company and would continue long after he was gone. He wheeled the dolly through the warehouse entrance. Inside, the atmosphere was different from the morning. There was more activity now, more voices. Drivers returning from their routes, warehouse staff preparing for the next day's deliveries. The space hummed with purposeful movement. The empty bottles went to a designated area where they would be processed. Michael arranged them in rows on the metal shelving, each one in its proper place. The plastic bottles made hollow sounds as they touched one another, a peculiar music in the busy warehouse. At the dispatch desk, he returned his clipboard and filled out the daily log. The pen made soft scratching sounds on the paper as he recorded each delivery, the time, and any notes about the coolers he had serviced. The routine was precise: address, time, status. All normal, all as expected. "Good day?" asked Joan, the warehouse manager, as she passed by. "Same as always," Michael replied, which was exactly how he preferred it. "That's what we like to hear," she said with a nod, then continued on her way. Michael completed his paperwork and placed it in the appropriate tray. Another driver was waiting to use the desk, so he stepped aside with a nod of acknowledgement. The warehouse continued its activity around him, a hive of coordinated motion. At the employee's sink in the corner, he washed his hands thoroughly. The water was cool against his skin. He dried them on a paper towel, then disposed of it in the bin. These simple actions marked the transition from work to departure, a small ritual at the end of each day. In the small break room, he collected his personal belongings from his locker: wallet, keys, phone. The phone showed no messages or calls, which was usual. His wife knew his routine and would expect him home shortly. He slipped the phone into his pocket without unlocking it. Outside, the light had softened further, taking on the golden quality of late afternoon. The air was cooler now than it had been at midday. Michael walked to his car, parked in the employees' section of the lot. The vehicle had been sitting in the sun all day and was warm inside when he opened the door. He settled into the driver's seat and started the engine. The radio came on automatically, tuned to the same station he always listened to on his way home. The music was soft, unobtrusive, a gentle background to his thoughts. He adjusted the air conditioning to a comfortable level and pulled out of the parking space. As he drove away from the warehouse, the day's route played back in his mind: the law office, the corner store, the Meridian, the clinic, the insurance agency, the accounting firm. Each stop a familiar point in the landscape of his day, each one visited and then left behind until next Tuesday would bring him back again. The traffic was heavier now, but moving steadily. Michael merged into the flow, his car becoming part of the greater movement of the city. All around him, people were completing their own days, following their own patterns and routines. There was comfort in this collective rhythm, this shared dance of daily life. He drove with unhurried focus, moving steadily toward home. The sun dipped lower in the sky behind him, casting his shadow ahead of the car. The day was completing its arc, just as his route had completed its circle. Tomorrow would bring another day, another route. The water bottles would be filled again, loaded onto trucks, delivered to their destinations. The cycle would continue, reliable as the rising of the sun. At a red light, Michael paused and looked out at the city around him. The familiar buildings, the streets he had traveled hundreds of times, the trees beginning to show the first hints of seasonal change. There was peace in this familiarity, in knowing exactly where he was and what would come next. The light turned green, and he moved forward, continuing his journey home through the gentle evening.